10 Steps for Freedom. What is it? America coming together, home by home, to build a critical mass of understanding of the clear and present dangers to America, the blessings of liberty and freedom, and the hope of a better future. Here's how it works. It starts with 5 films.
We need to recognize the threats that are out there, and the threat of ballistic missile attack is real.
The longest times are typically around 30 to 33 minutes for a long-range missile from North Korea to the United States or from Iran to the United States.
So imagine instead of planes, if this had been a nuclear weapon on a ballistic missile and it had detonated just a few thousand feet above our heads.
If someone exploded a high-altitude nuclear weapon over the United States, the electromagnetic pulse would affect all the electronics within line of sight of that burst. Medical services wouldn't be available because they needed electric power. Telephones wouldn't work. The traffic lights would stop working. Big traffic jam. Transportation would be shut down.
Your call cannot be completed.
So when all else fails, when all the negotiations have broken down, when there is a missile in the air, you have to have the ability to destroy it. Because the only other ability that you would have would be to apologize to those that died.
The entire Roman economy was built on slave labor. If you were born a slave, your average lifespan in Rome was about 20 years, and they would just simply work to death.
The idea that all men are created equal and that they are endowed by their creator with certain rights is not at all a new idea. It is, in fact, as the phrasing indicates, it is in the creation story.
The French Revolution had no moral order beyond convention, beyond consensus of the National Assembly. When you take God out of the picture, you take this notion of higher law, of the whole framework for ordered liberty out of the picture.
Think of what a scandal it would be if we were to say the abolitionists should have kept their Christian faith out of the struggle against slavery.
To understand how the freedom project in the modern world emerges not in China, not in India, not in the Islamic world, but in Europe, and in Europe's child, America, then we have to come to grips with the biblical part of the foundation of Western civilization.
Without the entrepreneur, economies are barren. They're dead.
When we think about God, the very first thing we know about God was that He created something.
What you must do is focus on what other people need, want, desire, and try to serve it better or in a new way with value added in a way nobody else has. So in that sense, an entrepreneur must be other-directed. You must be watching your fellow human beings.
When God fashions man from the dust of the earth and breathes into him the breath of life and speaks those first words of vocation to the human family, He, in effect, is inviting the human family to be co-creators with him, not co in the sense of equal, but co in the sense of cooperating, working with him in the continuation of the creation of the world. What an awesome vocation that is.
When I saw the second airplane hit, I knew jihad has come to America.
They see all of these not as specific wars, but as fronts in a global jihad.
Most people don't realize that Muslims are also victims. Because if they disagree, they get killed.
We've been infiltrated by people who want the Quran to replace our constitution. The propaganda of Islam is very similar to the propaganda of Nazism. It's the same hate speech.
Little kids being taught songs, I want to be a suicide bomber.
برافو برافو
Bravo, bravo. It's the duty of all moderate Muslims to stand up and speak against the hate, to speak against the jihad.
إن هؤلاء أيها الإخوة الكرام هم من أعداء الإسلام.
Ultimately, the price we're talking about is the price of freedom.
We're at war with the most dangerous enemy that has ever faced mankind in his long climb from the swamp to the stars. It's been said if we lose that war, and in so doing lose this way of freedom of ours, history will record with the greatest astonishment that those who had the most to lose did the least to prevent its happening. There's no argument over the choice between peace and war, but there's only one guaranteed way you can have peace, and you can have it in the next second. Surrender. You and I have the courage to say to our enemies, there is a price we will not pay, there is a point beyond which they must not advance. You and I have a rendezvous with destiny. We'll preserve for our children this, the last best hope of man on earth, or we'll sentence them to take the last step into 1,000 years of darkness. The story isn't over. You and the audience are part of the conflict.
So what can one person do? Seemingly, not much. But what if one person invited 5 friends for pizza in one of these movies? And what if they invited 5 friends to watch the films? And they invited 5 friends. 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 That's almost 10 million people. And what if 10 million people chose to keep themselves informed daily through accurate websites, television and talk radio, newspapers and magazines, and they began to understand? What if 10 million people chose to pray for our country and our leaders? What if 10 million people chose to join together with other like-minded individuals to make their voices effectively heard in the community, media, and the legislatures? What if 10 million people chose to get to know those shaping public policy by developing friendly relationships with them and helping them to understand the dangers to America and our heritage and strengths? So what if 10 million people chose to act? Washington had only 2,500 soldiers to cross the Delaware that Christmas of 1776. As Thomas Paine wrote that Christmas, these are the times that try men's souls. The summer soldier and the sunshine patriot will in this crisis shrink from the service of his country. But he that stands now deserves the love of man and woman. 5 films, 5 steps equals 10 steps for freedom. A groundswell like this is not just possible, it's probable if each of us is willing to take 10 simple steps for freedom. And it starts with one person, you. Will you stand now with us, home by home, building a critical mass of understanding of the clear and present dangers to America, the blessings of liberty and freedom, and the hope of a better future? At this time in our nation's history, your country needs your involvement. It's time.